Hello and welcome everyone to the Deep Dive with the Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, or RICI for short. We're a grassroots nonprofit made of Christians and Jews working to combat anti-Semitism, educate about Israel, and promote our shared Judeo-Christian or Western values. This podcast is produced by the Ocean State Current and is a bold exploration of the issues shaping Israel, America, and Rhode Island, and the future of Western civilization. It's hosted by me, Maria Friedman, Executive Director of Rhode Island Coalition for Israel, or RICI, and the podcast brings clarity to complex topics so that our viewers have the knowledge and confidence to engage in informed discussions. Deep Dive expands the conversation beyond headlines. Rooted in Judeo-Christian values, this podcast showcases the grassroots partnership between Jews and Christians working together to combat anti-Semitism and confront the BDS movement through education and advocacy. We lead candid discussions that challenge false narratives and provide historical, moral, and strategic context. From community voices to national thought leaders, this program amplifies perspectives often overlooked. Deep Dive delivers news and views designed to turn the tide in Rhode Island and beyond. So with that, I'm very excited to welcome my special guest, Andria Spindel, who was the president and CEO of March of Dimes Canada for almost 39 years, growing it from a provincial entity to one of Canada's largest nonprofit rehabilitation and disability service and advocacy organizations. She also is the current president of Kulanu Canada, a charitable organization she founded in 2014 to assist dispersed and isolated Jewish communities around the world. This involves volunteer and financial assistance to Jews in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and elsewhere. She has also been the full-time volunteer executive director of CAEF, or Canadian Antisemitism Education Foundation, since January 2019. So welcome, Andria. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk to you, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been so impressed by your work. I'm going to kick things off by just showing a quick video that highlights some of the amazing work that your organization has done, and then we will get to talking further. Thank you.
It seems that our enemies have a special propensity for planning their attacks against Israel on important religious holidays when we are most vulnerable and occupied. After the horror of the Second Intifada, which occurred on the first day of Rosh Hashanah on September the 28th, the year 2000, Israel was attacked by Arab terrorists throughout the country. Jewish people everywhere were horrified, and I became determined to do something. The internet was in its infancy. People were beginning to use email. Twitter had just been invented, and anti-Semitism was on the rise, showing its ugly head in a new way. After hearing Erwin Kotler deliver a talk on Israel's indigeneity to over 1,000 people, and ended up by telling everyone present, go home and tell 10 non-Jewish people what I have said, I personally felt inadequate and realized that we needed knowledgeable speakers to teach Jewish and non-Jewish people about the glorious history of the Jewish people, presenting accurate facts and truths to combat all the lies we were hearing in the media, and to write letters to the editor promoting Israel's case and fighting anti-Semitism. But how would we do this? By inviting expert speakers to lecture at large gatherings. Education was the key. So when I sat down with our lawyer in 2004 to apply for charitable status for our new organization, we needed a name for our group, but it was clear: the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation, CAEF. Perfect.
CAEF continues to offer education about Jews, Israel, and anti-Semitism. focusing on combating anti-Zionism, the most prevalent form of Jew hatred today. Education isn't enough, especially when anti-Zionism is coming from our education system itself, including teacher training institutions, unions, and the diversity, equity, and inclusion consultants. Advocacy and action are essential as we face hatred from the left, the right, and radical Islam or Islamism. Working with allies from Christian, Hindu, Muslim, and other communities is essential. Antisemitism isn't just a Jewish problem. The rise of hatred against any community is a societal problem. CAEF welcomes support and collaboration from all who value freedom, justice, and opportunity for all.
Amazing. That was a great video. So, Andrea, can you expand on, introducing yourself? I know we just heard from you from the video, and a little bit more about CAEF, or Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation.
Sure, thank you. So as you've heard, Shirley Ann Haber founded the organization, and she had two major thrusts, which she alluded to. One was bringing in speakers, and she did so, and I was going to hear a lot of these speakers, and she called that Speakers Action Group. She also organized people to write letters, sign petitions, and lobby, and she called that the Media Relations Group. Excuse me. And I was a writer. I was sending letters. So I was a volunteer. I was working full time, but I was taken in by her action. There weren't a lot of people speaking about anti-Semitism. And I recall her speaking at the synagogue I then belonged to, and then myself feeling very upset when I heard about rising anti-Semitism. And what really surprised me was the people in the room who said, it's not happening. It's fear-mongering for her to speak of it. So I was left somewhat puzzled, but certainly moved by Shirley Ann, and I just got more involved. I went to every speaker event she had, and she had very large turnouts, and she brought to Canada people that you'll recognize, like Edward Brown. All of a sudden, I have to go back and think. Carolyn Glick spoke, Kostorovich, Eugene Kostorovich, real experts on Israel's land rights, the Intifada, what was going on in terms of Arab communities, a variety of subjects, but each and every speaker was an expert. Mordechai Kedar in particular was phenomenal. So I stayed involved and was then invited to a board meeting. I spoke up. Probably that's how I got snagged into getting more involved. And really on the day that I retired, I became instantly the executive director of CAEF. So that was really January of 2019. At the time, I worked with Shirley Ann and the board that was in place and a steering committee to bring in speakers. And we would have a number of speakers throughout the year. It was all in person. It was usually hosted by either a professional body downtown, like a law office or some other association or a church or a synagogue. And then the pandemic happened, right? Early 2020, February of 2020. And I actually moved out of an office that was then available and started to work at home. Here I am. And the next thing that happened is that I discovered Zoom. I guess everybody did. And it actually expanded our reach, expanded the world. I did the first webinar in April of 2020. And it was with Yifa Siegel, who was then the founder and exec at the Israel Legal Forum. Interestingly enough, that first Zoom, which she actually managed, was Zoom bombed. And it was the first, and it was horrible. It was ugly. It was Nazi marches, naked people screaming Nazi slogans, and our event shut down. However, it got national coverage. I spoke to the media and explained that this is what was happening to a Jewish organization that was simply having a private speaker with an audience via Zoom. So that got a little bit of attention, and I started to do webinars every week. So for a couple of years, I was doing a lot of webinars. We didn't have a formal communications vehicle when I started, but I created a bulletin so that we could reach the people who are subscribers, all of whom were people who had previously attended in-person events. And we built the list by then promoting our webinars. I created a weekly bulletin, which I still produce, and things grew from there. because of the background I have, which was fundraising, advocacy, service development, volunteer management, board grantsmanship, board management, and my organization then was very significant, very large. I was able to bring a lot of those skills and what I call the administrivia to CAEF. So we've now operate a number of programs, and we've developed a lot of partnerships. But Shirley Ann began that. She already worked with the International Christian Embassy Jerusalem, and she worked with specific church groups locally. And we expanded it so that now we're also working with a number of Hindu organizations, definitely the Iranian community, which has supported Israel and which we're now supporting in their activities to, fight for freedom for Iranian people. We've supported people in the Yazidi community. CAEF, interestingly enough, did some other things that spawn other organizations. I don't think all of our own subscribers know that, but
Wow.
through the then president who brought me in, Irving Weisdorf, he started a group to sponsor Yazidis who were stuck in terrible conditions in Iraq and Syria. And out of that grew an organization that continues today called Project Abraham, which has supported dozens, if not hundreds, of Yazidis who've come to Canada. And some of us formed our own refugee support groups, and we worked with individual families, and I was involved in that, but it's now a separate entity and a separate charity. We worked with another group called Canadians for Israel's Legal Rights, which was founded by two outstanding volunteers, one who passed away suddenly. And that organization had been bringing to the Knesset, really lobbying from here to the Knesset, that it take a stronger stand in defending Israel's rights to Judea and Samaria. And today you can see finally some major changes happening in Israel. But I would say this group working with others in Israel was significant, and they produced a book, a summary of all of the legal documents that support Israel's legal rights. And we were a disseminator, and we worked with that organization for a number of years. Now we work with many Jewish grassroots organizations that are not incorporated entities, but that really sprang up since October 7th. There's just been a flurry of activity. So we are what I call the backbone to supporting organizations that are out there doing the work, and we can provide the administrative structure because we are a licensed charity, because I have that experience. So we can manage some of the administrative tasks. So just to name a couple, Canadian Women Against Antisemitism is working with us. The Jewish Educators and Families Association is working with us. I just got off the phone with another organization that is Israeli-based called the Badin Center for Near East Policy Research. And we help them raise money in Canada to film and document the training by UNRWA delivered by Hamas to children, Arab children, to teach them how to kill Jews, to teach them that Israel doesn't exist and they should hate us and eradicate us as a people. And we have provided through local activities and fundraising support to that organization.
Wonderful. Wow, Andrea, thank you for that overview. I can tell that you're a powerhouse. You're doing amazing things. I have the pleasure of reading your bulletins and still in awe of how you do this, especially as a volunteer too, full time. It's incredible. But CAEF has definitely reached globally, and RICI, my organization, has had the privilege of being a community partner with you several times on different webinars to bring in experts on anti-Semitism. So thank you for your work. And I know we're talking about Canada, but what are the key differences about anti-Semitism between Canada and US, or is it the same beast that we're dealing with?
It's a very interesting question, and I noted in advance you were going to raise it, and so I've really been pondering whether there's a difference. I'm not so sure. I think the reality right now is that across North America, and actually even true in many Western European countries, and in Australia, I'm learning, in New Zealand, the hate is coming through three sources to not just our community, but to society at large. The extremism is coming from the left and the right, we are the avatar. The Jewish people are the avatar for that. So hit us first, but behind us are all the other people that support liberal values. And I was really impressed with your speaking about, Ricky, in promoting American values, civil liberal values. I think that's an important statement, and I was very impressed that you emphasized that. I think that we are all being bombarded by this, but the Jews are at the front. The radical Islam or Islamism, I think, is a very serious threat that is typically being ignored, maybe more so here than in the US, because I see that President Trump is at least beginning to acknowledge that the Muslim Brotherhood poses a danger. Why only in certain jurisdictions is he naming it? I don't know. We have been part of a group lobbying here, advocating that the Muslim Brotherhood also be listed here. But since the Muslim Brotherhood is just an ideology and not a physical entity, you know, you don't get a membership card, you don't go to a particular office. These are the members of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's an ideology that is pervasive in many Islamic organizations. So you really have to name the organizations. And that's what we would wish to have happen. So similar sources. I think the emphasis now across the West is anti-Zionism, which masquerades, hides, disguises anti-Semitism. And I see what's happening, initiated in Canada, actually, a movement against anti-Zionism. We need to call it out. And I think for a long time, I think we Jewish people have been too positive and often too passive when we're seeing things that are harmful. So we didn't want to call it out. So we would still say anti-Semitism. Thankfully, many people started to speak about Jew hatred, as we did, because in 2020, we actually became the Canadian branch of End Jew Hatred.
Wow.
And launched that movement. And so we've been using that lexicon. And now we're saying anti-Zionism. We have said for some years that's our focus, because that is what is being expressed on the streets. Instead of saying, you know, eradicate the Jews, that would be pretty terrible. You just say eradicate Israel, and somehow that's okay. You know, that's less obnoxious. I don't know, but people get away with saying that. The implication is you're going to get rid of the Jews, but you don't say that. So I think that's true across the board in North America. And we're working with the North American Values Institute. You might be familiar with that as well, that David Bernstein founded. He's the author of Woke Antisemitism. We did a symposium with his organization in Toronto 2 years ago, and we're working on another one now. And our intent is, as he's described it, an inter-ethnic, international strategy on how to combat woke anti-Semitism. And when I say woke anti-Semitism, I get a label across my forehead that, you know, somehow I'm a racist. But the truth is, we're seeing the leftist ideology as harmful in a merger with radical Islam. So we're looking at how do we confront it from K to 12. Really, it's embedded in our school system, and it's embedded in your school system. Some jurisdictions have done better than others in confronting it, and we hope to learn from each other. One of the bad things Canada's given to the US most recently, I've learned, is this concept of anti-Palestinian racism.
Yes, I've been hearing a lot about this.
Yeah, so if you say there is no country called Palestine, or even if you say this land is Israel, you're an anti-Palestinian racist. That's pretty radical, right?
Right.
It's pretty radical. And schools are adopting this position. The federal government is adopting this position. So you're basically getting political ammunition against the Jewish people by virtue of people being so ignorant and stupid about it that they'd pass something that says you can be an anti-Palestinian racist. We would like them to consider what's an anti-Israel racist then. Same reverse, but the same idea. So I think the poison is coming from both, like we influence what happens in the US, and the US is influencing what happens to us. You have ethnic studies. I've read a lot about it, and I understand how it's pretty detrimental to understanding the diversity of our cultures. It's really very anti-Semitic at the core. We haven't had mandatory ethnic studies, thankfully, but we have some of the aspects of that in that the public schools will teach, or at least claim there is Palestinian racism, while at the same time they have anti-Islamophobia policies. And we're saying, how can you have separate policies, anti-Muslim, anti-Islamophobia, anti-Palestinian? Like, what does that all mean? Right? How it makes no sense. So
Right.
so anyhow, so I think there's similarities in that regard.
Definitely. Yeah, you touched on a lot of things. And for viewers that might not be as familiar with radical Islam, when we're saying that, we're talking about an ideology that comes from the Quran that actually commands, if people follow it literally, to hurt Jews. It actually says to stone Jews. And they're teaching this, to their kids and saying that, if you kill Jews or commit violent acts against them, you can become a martyr and get rewarded from Allah or their God in heaven. That's where this is all stemming from. But the thing is they're not just keeping this religion to themselves. They're indoctrinating people. They're taking over public street squares like we've seen in the UK and other countries in Europe. And they're now putting in place different laws, like I know they have in UK, where you can't even criticize Islam. So this is what we're talking about when we're saying radical Islam. We're not talking about the average, everyday, moderate Sunni Muslim person who doesn't have that hatred. The thing is, it's just so pervasive in these groups like Muslim Brotherhood. Um, are basically infecting this ideology across different countries in the world and empowering different terrorist groups to, commit atrocities. And it's happening all over the world, including, US and Canada. So it's something that people should be aware of. I want the everyday Rhode Islander or American or Canadian or wherever you're listening from, I want you to know that this is a threat to us. And that's why the work of our organizations is so important, because it doesn't just start with it doesn't just end with the Jews, as they say. It starts with the Jews. You said we were in the front lines, and then behind us, they're already starting to attack the Christians and in general our democratic fabric in our Western societies. So it's something that we should be extremely vigilant about. And then you were talking
And I
about anti,
forget that
yeah,
it
oh, go
also
ahead.
threatens Muslims. The,
Mm-hmm.
most of the people murdered by radical Islam are Muslims, other Muslims. And we don't hear enough about it because if Muslims kill Muslims, the West doesn't even report it. Nobody cares, right?
Right.
The fact that Hamas killed many of its own civilians, and anybody that wanted to deal with Israel was considered a traitor, so they'd be killed. Or you're gay, so you're killed. There's so many reasons that they have for eradicating people they don't want, and yet that's not reported.
Right.
One of the reasons that I think the Hindu population is very interested in working with us is they too are victims in both India and Bangladesh of radical Islam. So I think that we need to think of the concern of our movements, if you like, and yours for sure, working with Christians, is that we're looking at a whole of society threat. The Islamists have done horrible things in Nigeria, kidnapping hundreds and hundreds of girls, murdering people in churches. In the Congo, a few months ago, they beheaded 70 people in a Sunday morning church service, and it gets no airplay,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even get reported. And yet that is what's happening worldwide. And only if Jews are involved does it get to be a big story. But
Mm-hmm.
it's a societal issue. It's a global issue.
Definitely. So many topics. I love it, but I want to go back to anti-Zionism for a second, because I think that's a really important topic. And basically, if you're anti-Zionist, it just means that you believe Israel doesn't have the right to exist and that Jews don't have the right to their ancestral indigenous homeland, which is Israel. Obviously, our organizations are Zionists and we are Zionists, but this anti-Zionism movement has taken over. Like you said, people are masking behind, oh, well, I'm just trying to criticize Israel. I don't hate Jews. And they're hiding behind those claims, but we know that there's Jew hatred beneath that. So how does your organization expose the dangers of anti-Zionism, and how are you fighting it, or how are you combating it in Canada?
Well, there's several things that I think need to be drawn out here. And it was a lesson for me recently to realize that there are anti-Zionist Jews and there are anti-Zionist Jewish organizations. So I want to share this idea with your listeners. Rabbi Amiel Hirsch in New York, who is a spiritual leader of a very significant Reform synagogue, and the son of a rabbi who actually founded, I believe, the Reform Zionist organization, Artza. He says there is no Judaism without Zionism, and I think that's an important starting point. Zionism is not just a political movement that arose because of people like to think of the Herzl having seen the injustice in a French court, goes away and forms a World Zionist Organization. It's not that simple. Zionism existed long before him. Zionism is foundational to the Torah itself. If God said to Abraham, go down to the land, what land was it, right? And we've been going to that land ever since. And it doesn't matter whether you're an observant Jew or religious in any way. That is how Judaism came to be. So it's been a lesson for me because I've not been well educated in religion, in the Jewish faith, but only in the culture. And so I've learned a ton in the last couple of years. And I realized that Jews don't understand it. For Jews to say that they don't think Israel should exist or that they think they're just criticizing policy, it's sad, really. It's a mistake on their part. So we need to realize that if 30%, 20 to 30% of the people who say they're anti-Zionist, of Jews say they are anti-Zionist, they are really harming our people, right? Because they are then assuming the country doesn't have to exist. The country exists not because there was a Holocaust or pogroms. That certainly provided a safe place and it's a necessity, but the return was over 2,000 years. People have been looking to go back to Israel for over 2,000 years. So that's really important. Okay, so we try to educate people about that. What is Zionism and what is anti-Zionism? And that is built into some of our materials, the webinars that we've hosted. More recently, I've created a little PowerPoint presentation called Anti-Zionism is Anti-Semitism. And to have people identify themselves as Zionists, people have been afraid to use the word. It's almost like they're afraid to be tagged, like they've said something bad about themselves. It's really sad, right? So confronting it, using the word, and exploring what it means is really what I think is important. We have focused on that in all of our material because we think that every accusation, trope, or degrading or demonizing statement made against Jews historically is now what's being applied to Israel. And if you look at some of the horrible images online, you'll see the same image that was around in the 30s and the 40s is being applied to Israel. So it's really a matter, I guess, of bringing that insight to it. You're probably aware then that a movement started. Adam Lewis Klein, a Canadian grad student from McGill, I think, started the movement against anti-Zionism. And locally, we have a gal who started Stop Anti-Zionism. She's put a fabulous presentation together. And you've also talked to Andrew Pessin, who's created the Institute for the Studies of Critical Anti-Zionism, which I think is brilliant. I think it's fabulous that he's doing that. All these things connect, and we all need to connect around them. So more people should support his institute and share the other information that is being generated on the source of anti-Zionism. Interestingly enough, according to the woman that I've worked with here, there's two. I guess Naya Leckett has been talking about the Stop Anti-Zionism, as has Natasha Payne, and they're pointing out, they both have a background from Russia, they are pointing out that this was part of the anti-Israel indoctrination begun by Russia in the 60s, and it's just flourished, right? And that's where it's all coming from. It is not about criticizing Israeli policies. The people who want to shut down the IRA definition do so on a false claim that IRA silences criticism of Israel. It does not. It explicitly does not do that.
Yes, and so for those that don't know, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, or IRA, they have created a working definition of anti-Semitism that has been adopted in over 37 states in the US, and like schools around the world, different entities. And we actually here in Rhode Island have been working to get it passed at a state level, and that is part of the pushback that we're receiving. I actually just had a legislator email me yesterday and say, well, doesn't it preclude that you can't criticize Israel? And I still need to respond to that because they clearly didn't look at, I did include some materials and education, but they didn't read it and they're just going off of hearsay. And it's really sad because these woke, like you said, woke anti-Semitism, we're struggling to get even our own Jewish legislators here in our state to agree on adopting this definition, let alone the other legislators. But everyone else is like, well, if the Jewish legislators can't agree on it, then why should we support it? I don't want to get involved. And it's unfortunate because the definition is a great resource for it could be used by law enforcement, school officials, a number of different community leaders, and even just the general average person in order to determine if something was anti-Semitic or not, which is very important. We don't want to just cry wolf and call anything anti-Semitism if it's not. So that definition is extremely important, and I do think the Jews we're getting in our own way, in a way, because of our own infighting, which is very sad to see. But I'm happy that you're carrying the torch in Canada and beyond and spreading this. And like you said, we need to amplify each other's messages. So,
What's very peculiar. It's I don't know how to even analyze it. The federal government here was a signatory to the IRA definition when it was created. The provincial government has subsequently adopted it. We were one of the groups pressing for that. And yet there is no actual application or implementation. And you probably will see that a number of the states or institutions, they'll adopt it. But if they don't put a plan in place to educate people about it, to hold people accountable, this is the definition you're to use. And if you don't act on it, we will come after you. And then it's useless. And so we've got most of the provinces have adopted it, the feds have adopted it, but we don't see action in support of it. And that's really quite tragic. I noticed that there's one country now, why can't it come to mind? Maybe in one country in Europe that has just adopted it as legislation. So it's not just a working definition. And I think that's what we ultimately need.
mm-hmm.
We need a law to support it. And I know that's in itself controversial.
Right, right. Can you highlight for us a story of a recent win in your work?
Yeah. And that's a toughie because we do so much and we wonder if we're making any headway. We did actually succeed in having a specific teacher terminated for high level, frequent postings, which were anti-Semitic. And harmful. We point out the harm, and there have been a number of cases. We have filed maybe 20 complaints with the Ontario College of Teachers against teachers who are posting anti-Semitic stuff or have said things in classrooms or have led kids in demonstrations they had no business leading them to or have maligned the Jewish people. There have been a number of cautionary messages issued against teachers at the conclusion of investigations. Each case is individually investigated. Some cases take like literally 2 years to even get in front of a disciplinary committee. But we did succeed in getting one person, most very recently, Fernanda Carafa, terminated from her employment. We have a case against an engineer that we brought to the Professional Engineers Associate Organization, their college. And again, 2 years later, it is now being adjudicated, at their tribunal. I'm actually a witness for that since we brought the complaint. We have succeeded in having a number of speakers who were booked, public speakers who have demonized Israel and lied about Israel and been horribly bigoted, having them, the venues cancel them. One could say
Wow.
we're against the cancel culture, and for sure, because we know that most pro-Israel speakers are avoided before they ever get off the track. You know, universities are canceling them all the time. However, we have had venues, not the sponsoring organization, but the venues shut down people that they felt were going to be harmful by bringing rioting anti-Semites into their premises. Um, we've also, I don't know if it's a win, but we have contributed to research that has brought to light a number of other concerns. So, for example, most of the focus is on students on campus and the anti-Semitism they experience in the classroom, in the textbooks, from teachers, from colleagues, from protesters, encampments, etc. We helped to fund a research study on the impact of anti-Semitism on faculty across Canada. And I think that was a very important piece of information to get out, that it isn't just students, but faculty are being doxxed, ignored, unpromoted, right? Courses canceled, and it's quite serious. And part of it is coming from what's called the Jewish Faculty Network, which is an anti-Zionist group of faculty members who have actually caused a lot of the problem. So we've done a lot to expose the problem and on an individual level to support individuals who are going through some of this.
Wow. I would definitely call those wins. Those are really important things. Even just eliminating one professor or one teacher, I do think that all makes a difference. And we're experiencing the same problems here at our universities as well. For example, at Brown University in the Middle East Studies Department, there are also faculty, some who are Jews and some who are non-Jews, that are blatantly anti-Semitic and anti-Zionist, and promoting that in academic conference or even in the classroom. And we are also trying to do similar work. We haven't been so successful per se in shutting down any events, but we have been able to mobilize people to send, thousands of emails and letters to administrators, urging them to do so, or at least also offer a pro-Israel speaker or a pro-Israel conference to offset these anti-Zionists. I'm putting academic conference in quotes because
Right.
it's not
Not
academic, it's just
academic.
hatred.
That's
It's
right.
just this hateful ideology that they're spewing in this false name of academia. But that is really, really amazing, Andrea. I think you should be really proud of that work. And just on the other side, what pushback have you received in your work, or what are some of the biggest obstacles? In addition to, like we said, some of our own Jewish people maybe being in our way.
Well, some small things, some subtle, some not so subtle. So, for example, I've twice had presentations that were booked for me to speak. I've had them canceled. So, and interestingly enough, without giving me much information. So, I was asked to do a presentation for the City of Toronto employees by a Jewish committee of employees, and they gave me a lot of information. We had sessions to discuss the content. They saw what I was going to present. So it went over a number of weeks. I had a number of meetings with this committee, and there were all kinds of perspectives of the people on that committee that I was to accommodate. 3 days before this presentation, which was to be by Zoom, open to any Toronto employee, of which there are 40,000. I didn't expect more than maybe 100. But 3 days beforehand, I was canceled by somebody reporting to the, I think, Human Rights Department that CAEF is racist. Why? Because we had a message on our website that showed the map of the Middle East, where Israel's a teeny tiny slice surrounded by Muslim countries. And
Yes.
below that, we spoke about the size of the land, the size of the population. And a phrase there said, I don't remember what the square kilometers were of the two places, but whatever the Muslim land, which is like, in excess of 10
Wow.
times, maybe 100 times larger, it said, and they want more. And that was deemed to be a racist slur. And I was canceled. I was never told who brought the complaint or what the process was or whether I could appeal it. But with much embarrassment, the Jewish committee said I couldn't present. So that was a wake-up call,
Wow.
right? Then
That's
I
too
was
bad.
booked to speak to a department of the provincial government, specifically the Anti-Racism Directorate. And I was, and 6 months ahead of
Do you
time.
mind actually really quick? I just wanted to pull up an
Yeah,
image. It was maybe something
that's
similar
it.
to this, right? Where you can see on
Yeah,
this picture that this blue
exactly.
speck right here, that's Israel, which
Yeah,
in US terms is about the size of the state of New Jersey, surrounded by all these Arab Muslim states. So I'm sure you had a comparison of the numbers there, and it's
exactly. That's all it was. It was that map. And that phrase that you've got there would probably warrant my being canceled because that's how people respond these days, right?
right.
So yeah, no, that's a great map. My where you've got red, I've got green, same map. Um, so the canceling of the next one was that I was asked to do a presentation very simply on who are the Jews. This was not a controversial topic. However, the woman that was to plan it with me waited until, I guess, really a month after the date in which I was to speak because she never confirmed the date. And then said, well, no, we've decided not to do that. It's going to be done at a higher level by a different department across the entire public service. Of course, that never happened. So there was another underlying message there, and I can't even begin to figure out how I'm going to source that one.
Hmm.
So those are subtle, really, they're indirect. On the other hand, there's an organization here called Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, which has nothing to do with justice or peace. It's a
Hmm.
rabid anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic outfit that's been around for a long time. And we got listed by them as one of the bad guys. So I think in some ways, we were saying, we finally made the list, right? Along with Honest Reporting Canada, B'nai B'rith Canada, now CAEF is listed as well. So, that's an honor roll from my perspective.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I haven't felt threatened. And I have had on my front lawn for several years now a big sign that says, "We stand with Israel."
Good for you. I love that you're, a proud Zionist and a proud Jewish person. I think that's beautiful. And I encourage my Jewish friends to do the same thing and wear it with pride. So I'm glad that you have been safe, but it also is unfortunate, that you've been canceled. That it's just kind of the world that we live in. And I think that's happening everywhere. So I wanted to go back to the interfaith relations aspect of your organization. I know you had touched on it before, but can you tell us how that has gone? And have you attempted to work with Muslim groups at all? Tell us
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So one of the speakers that I early had when I started doing webinars was Raheel Raza, who is the founding president of Muslims Facing Tomorrow and a co-founder of the organization called the Council of Muslims Against Antisemitism, which is a cross-border organization. You have one of its leaders in the US, Dr. Zuhdi Jaffer.
Yes, Dr. Zudi Jasser. We're friends with
Yeah.
him as well,
So he's one
Ricky.
of the founders. Raheel here is one of the founders. So Raheel did a webinar for me, with me actually in 2021, I think, which the title was "I'm an Unapologetic Zionist." And she's been to Israel more times than most Jews, right? So we have worked with her organization and carried messages that she has published. And a year ago, in 2024 and 2025, we provided some funding to another organization called the Exigent Foundation, money from CAF to that organization, which was taking journalists to Israel, non-aligned journalists, to see for themselves, to bear witness. And we contributed funds. And then when I asked if we could literally identify somebody to attend from another ethnic community, I was encouraged to do so. And we sent a Muslim journalist, Canadian, originally from Pakistan, to Israel as one of the participants on this particular tour. And he came back and wrote several articles about what he saw, and
Wow.
we've become friends. He's quite lovely. And I realized that there are people like him who are themselves battling the Islamists, right? He has no trouble, although he may get sanctioned for it, saying he's a Zionist, and no trouble saying that we are to be fighting Islamism. So on the other hand, the largest group of people that we worked with that are Muslim are the Iranians. You mentioned the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood, but the Iranian tyrannical regime that's in power there right now has the same beliefs as the Sunnis, I guess. They may disagree on some fundamental esoteric aspects of their interpreting the Quran, but they both blame the Jews for just about everything. And we've been working with the Iranian community. They've come to many of our rallies. We've attended theirs. We've got speakers at their events and vice versa. And interestingly, most recently, there was a delegation to Ottawa that met with MPs that included a member from our board and the Imam of Peace. You may have heard of Mohammed Chahwidi, Imam Chahwidi, and that group went to Ottawa to prevail upon the government to name the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist entity. And so there were Muslims in that group as well.
That's great that you have been able to work with that community. We haven't been successful at that here in Rhode Island. I really would love to work with like peaceful, moderate Muslims. I haven't been able to reach them, but my doors are open. And I think that they can make a big difference. But I do know that there are real risks and dangers too for them speaking out. Oftentimes they get ousted or even death threats from their own community. I know you mentioned Dr. Zudi Jasser, who is a Muslim who lives in Phoenix. He has had gotten death threats,
Yeah.
since he started speaking out vocally in support of Israel, but also denouncing Sharia law or radical Islam. And so these discussions are so important because, again, this is
Right.
all about trying to safeguard our Western democratic values and make sure that they aren't hijacked by radical Islam, because that's what we have to
That's
do.
right.
That's what we're fighting
Yeah.
for. So,
I think for Heal likewise. I think that she's had to have security from time to time as well. And maybe you need to see if there's an Iranian dissident group somehow that you could reach.
yeah, so actually we just did yesterday was our second rally that we organized in support of the Iranian people. So we had the
Right.
former flags, with the
Lion,
lion
yeah,
before the, bad regime,
lion
and
and
Israel flags and American flags. So three
right.
different flags.
Wonderful.
And we did actually have a few Iranian people that came and participated, which was great. I did like find a Facebook group too, and I posted on there something like, I think it was called Iranian Cultural Center of Rhode Island. I don't actually know who runs it. They didn't respond to my messages, but they at least approved my post, which was great. And I think, again, it's trying to get these, I guess, woke people or even just the average American to wake up to what's going on because many of them aren't aware that the radical Islamic repressive regime in Iran has been literally slaughtering their people left and right. I mean, I've heard reports of 40,000 people. I've
Yeah.
heard that it could be even over 100,000. We don't know the exact number, but they are literally slaughtering people in the worst ways right now. And where are these social justice warriors? Where are they protesting about it? I don't see any college students getting involved with this, yet they were involved with encampments, after October 7th. So,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
part of our work is to call out the hypocrisy of that, even if, we can't change. I always think of the bell curve. We can't really change the 10% who are already extreme in their views and very brainwashed, but we can at least bring attention to everyone else at how hypocritical their actions are and just again try to be a beacon of truth and stand for democracy like we're doing. So on that note, I also want to ask, how can people get involved with your organization or stay up to date if they want to follow you?
Well, to start with, they're welcome to sign up for our newsletter. They can send me a message directly, which is very simple, Andrea, Andria, at CAEF.ca, or go online to our website, CAEF.ca, and subscribe to the newsletter, which means that they'll then be notified when we have a webinar or an event or a petition. Like we just had over 12,800 people sign our petition that went to both the National Association of Social Workers in the US and the Canadian Association of Social Workers, urging both of these bodies to vote today at the International Federation of Social Workers to not eject the Israeli Union of Social Workers from that international body. So that got a lot of play across both countries. We're really grateful that a lot of Americans signed it. And
I did sign it as well, and I'm also a proud social worker, so that's a very important issue for me personally.
and I was, an MSW also. Interesting enough, as of yesterday, the NASW did come out saying they were not going to support the motion to evict the Israelis. The Canadian Association has not responded, but we sent the petition to them. So if people want to be that engaged, that's one way. Just reach out and get involved by reading, following, signing, whatever. If they're local and want to be more involved, there may be projects that they can help to take on. I would love to find a few people, young people, to do more social media. I'm not on the posting myself. We have two volunteer board members who do that. But that could be an area that they could assist in. And the other is literally doing some administrative stuff. I have lists that we write to, whether it's the members of parliament, the school boards, governing councils of the universities, etc. And I need somebody who is interested enough to actually spend the time to update lists and work with me on getting information out to people, right? So boring task needs to be done. I also have individuals who read books and write book reviews. We're happy to share any book that somebody wants to recommend on a subject related to the work we're doing. We're happy to post it on our website and to circulate the information. So people just need to reach out and say they're available.
That's amazing. And also the webinars, anyone can sign up for that. I mean, I've attended many CAEF webinars, and like I said, RICI has been signed on as a community partner to support those events, and we do frequently put them in our newsletter as well. So that is such a great way to just get educated, hear from different voices, because, if you don't know where Israel is on a map, if you don't know anything about Jewish history, if you don't know anything about Israel, that's a good place to start, because I think it's really important to have informed conversations with your friends and family, and that's one of the goals of this podcast and of our organization in general, is to empower people through education so that they can positively influence those around them, hopefully with a Zionist perspective of Israel and the West in general. So
And we really value that. You know that we have as many sometimes as 30 organizations partnering on a webinar, and that's really so that we can extend the reach. I don't ask people for money, just to promote it so that we get that in front of even more people.
yeah, that's wonderful. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or something that you wish I asked you about your work?
Well, one thing I could say that's interesting that volunteers could consider, we've created a couple of small PowerPoint presentations. I mentioned who are the Jews, and anti-Zionism is antisemitism, but we have one called the Shalom Project, and we created the Shalom Project team. We literally have met online with people in different communities. We run the program, we show it to them, and if they're willing to become a spokesperson, we give them the right to use it and share it in their community. So we've done 11 or 12 presentations to chapters of Hadassah, National Council of Jewish Women, synagogue groups, church groups. One of our volunteers presented to a Southeast Asian Women's Association. So if wherever you are, could be anywhere in North America, if you would like to become a spokesperson and get more involved, we can orient you, provide you the material and an orientation to a program that you could take out and become an educator about Jewish history, Jewish rights, what is Zionism, what is anti-Zionism, and what does the Hamas charter say? Hamas has only one goal. It's not building a country. It's not having a state called Palestine. It's absolutely not educating their people and coexisting with Israel. It is one goal, and it's in their charter: destroy Israel, kill the Jews. So we have published that. If anyone would like to be that involved, please get in touch.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you again, Andrea, for your time and for the amazing work that you're doing. I'm looking forward to continuing to partner with you in this work and exploring ways that we can work together and lift up our movement. And thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I look forward to seeing you here when you're in Ontario next.
Thank you so much. Israel. Hi, everybody. Stay tuned for our next episodes, and be safe out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye for now.